Hello. Welcome everyone to another episode of Spring Office Hours. Today Dan is traveling, so it's me and our special guest, Mark Pollack. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Wonderful. We have people joining us from all over the world. Hello, Simon, one of our regulars. Hello from Italy. Is this Italy as well? What flag is that? That's Italy, right?
It's a goofy flag.
Jitter Ted, hello. We got some of our regulars. Solitary, wonderful to see you. Hello, everyone. And we're doing stuff. India, that's wonderful. Thomas is coming in from Germany. Oh, what? North Carolina, hello. Wonderful. Yeah, this is pretty cool. We get to do this. We get people from all over the world. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Mark, you're doing great things. And we're going to get to that in just a sec. Normally what we do is we talk about kind of like the roadmap, things that are coming, things that are being released by the team. So I'll see if I can jump over and present that. Let's share a tab. Let's take a look at the calendar. Is that working? I'm going to throw this up here. And there we go. Here's what our calendar looks like. We have a lot of stuff coming up. A bunch of stuff from Reactor is coming out. And I'm looking forward to Spring Cloud Dataflow. The Spring Cloud Dataflow and Batch, those, they've kind of been highlighted for me recently. I didn't realize how big the ecosystem was around Batch. I didn't realize how big the Spring Cloud Dataflow use cases were and how wild.
Yeah, the survey that we have every year indicates, like, I think 2 years ago it was like 38% of the respondents use Batch, and it's 43%. Much lower percentage use Dataflow, which I wish wasn't the case, but yeah, Batch is way up there.
Yeah, and I had no idea. But I heard a lot about it at Spring One a couple weeks ago,
Hmm.
and yeah, so now that's something I'm going to dig into. I'm hearing a lot of cool things, my default was anytime I heard batch, I always asked like, why does it need to be batch? Let's not make it batch. Let's do real time. Let's do streaming. Let's do some other thing. But yeah, technology never goes away. Something you just said, like there's these use cases where batch is the answer. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
interesting stuff. But yeah, a lot of stuff coming. Spring Boot. We have a milestone release that's already out, and we're still looking ahead. We have the release candidates coming out in 4 weeks. You know what else is coming up soon? I believe it's on the 18th. Our new version of Java, right? Java's getting released on,
Mm.
I think it's on the 18th or the 19th of September. So, like, right around the corner. I know a lot of us took a long time to get to Java 17, but now, like, hey, congratulations, you got to 17. Now 21 is out, and there's a lot of cool things coming in there that we'll be sure to address here, like Project Loom and the virtual threads. That's going to be something exciting, but we'll get to that later. Yes, Java 21, exciting times, exciting times. So that was the calendar, but let's jump in. Mark, Spring CLI. Let's
Yeah,
start there.
let's start there. Why not? I could share my screen, but before I share the screen, yeah, it's been lurking around as a project in the background for years, like a really long time. Uh, it was originally started as part of App Accelerator, and then kind of branched off. And there's been Boot CLI, and of course there's Initializer. Everyone uses Initializer to create new projects. Gets a million hits a month. But the big problem I had, and I think a lot of the early genesis of projects are around itches that people scratch. In this case, it was, I want to quickly get the Spring AMQP app going, right? So when I go to Initializer or Spring Rabbit, whatever, right? I can pick my dependencies, but I don't get any code, right? And then even though I wrote with Mark Fisher a long time ago, the library, I myself do not remember everything, right, that I need to spin up to get the message listener container set up with JSON and blah, blah, blah. And so then I was like, all right, there must be a guide. And so I go to the Spring guides, and sure enough, there's a guide. The guide is kind of like, if you've done one Spring project, this sort of like workflow of first create your POM and then add this. And I'm like, just cut to the chase, because give me the goddamn code. So you look in the complete directory, for the completed guide.
Of course, we all skip to it because we've all been there.
Paste, and then after 20 minutes, you're like, hooray, that was 20 minutes of my life gone that I'm not getting back. And so the idea here was to do two things: was to streamline that, much like other ecosystems have, create React app, right? Why
Hmm.
don't we have the same thing, right? And then more importantly, I think, instead of just getting started, like, you want to add stuff to your existing projects. You don't, that's kind of really the more common case, I'd say, day to day, right? Uh, and for that, there also wasn't a lot of great compelling answers. I did look into JHipster. There are obviously
Hmm.
solutions out there. Uh, but JHipster is I found it very hard for just a casual, quick user to get started with it. And of course, you can use what's off the shelf. A lot of times, I felt it was very overkill. It wasn't kind of like small, right?
Right.
And
It's a
yeah,
full
you got
app.
a lot of
It's everything.
code. Yeah, and then you look like, how do I modify this? And then you get into Node and all this templating stuff. So the idea was to be able to add to your existing project in a couple ways, but one way that's unique in the Spring CLI is adding by merging a working project. So you have your project sitting in your directory. Let's say there's another project sitting out there, which is the example project. And how do you take those two and just merge it together, right? So if you did it manually, what would you do? Well, you look at the POM and say, what dependencies are there that aren't in mine? And then you copy those over. What are the properties? What are the plugins? then you look at the code and you say, okay, what packages? Let me cut and paste those into my package structure and so
Hmm.
on. So the Spring CLI, in terms of like adding code to your existing projects, it automates those kind of refactoring tasks. So we can go through it, but those are kind of some of the main goals. It's getting you started, but really then it's like, how do I add stuff to my current project
Yeah.
easily?
So there's always like the delta of like what's the good day zero experience, like the getting started experience, which has to be rock solid. Which that's why we
Mm-hmm.
have start. That's for today. Oh, that's a great. It's been
Mm-hmm.
solid for many years, and it continues to improve. But then there's always the what now part, and the example that you gave was like, hey, now I want to add RabbitMQ to this existing project. I want to add some event that's
Mm-hmm.
going to fire off in some part of this application, and I can go to the guide, but I would do that same thing. I'd go to the guide, I'd do the delta, do the diff, because I just want the RabbitMQ part. I want that little hello world, give me that working code added to this project that I already have.
Right.
And you're coming up with a solution for that.
Yeah. So I can demo it now. If
That'd
there
be
are any
great.
questions, just feel
That'd
free
be
to
great.
chat them, put them in the chat. Let's see. Here we go. Share screen.
So yeah, one of the things that I would say on the show, like to say on the show, when you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. Here at Spring Office Hours, the whole point of this is the thing I wish I had when I was doing Spring development as my day job. I wish I had access to people like you, Mark. I wish I had access. And if you're here, bring your questions. If you don't ask your questions, that's on you. If you're joining us, you're listening to this later on the podcast, you can always uh, follow up, save your questions, bring them to the next show. But you can also get a hold of us on Twitter. I'm at DaShaun and at Mark Pollack, MarkPollack. All right,
All right. Cool.
I'm gonna
So
throw
do you
you up
see
on
my
screen here.
screen now?
Yep, I'm
Yeah.
gonna add it here,
All right. That's great.
and whoops, I'm gonna add it like this. Let's see if I can get you. There we go. So now I've got your screen up there. We got a little bit of the background stuff.
Or maybe that's better.
Um, but I'm seeing your browser screen. I might want to see the other screen.
Oh, did I share the wrong screen? Okay. I'll click the other one. Sorry.
That's okay. We're doing it live. What could
This
possibly go
is
wrong?
lots of things. Window. Oh, here, entire screen. That's what I screwed up on. Okay.
All right. There we go. You're all set.
Cool. All right. So here we are. A blank work area. So this is the command Spring, and where you get this, just pop up a browser. Oh, now it's going the other window. So this is in the experimental repo, you see. So hopefully we'll get out of this pretty soon. And if we go to releases, here's a bunch of installers. Brew, I think, is the most popular one that's missing. But basically, you can download one of these and bootstrap yourself to get it working, the command line. I just have a simple alias. Does java-jar.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's do help.
Sorry, I got all this noise over here.
So here's what you can do. And we're going to focus on these two main ones, Spring Boot New and Spring Boot Add. There's a way to call initializer if you want. That might actually just be nice to show for very quickly. Oh, I think I didn't put the bash completions in here, but also go into sort of an interactive mode.
This looks familiar. Is this based on Spring Shell?
Yes. So actually, as a result of data flow um, using Spring Shell quite heavily, and we had to upgrade to newer versions of Boot. Project lead at the time, Yana, decided to really dig into Spring Shell again, which is a project I started a very long time ago. It was
I'm a
like a
fan.
desire for a common shell between like Gemfire, Tomcat, and Dataflow, something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it didn't last very long, I guess. It's still in Gemfire actually, so the Gemfire shell is still Spring Shell, but I don't think there was a Tomcat thing that kind of went south. But now he's done so much. I mean, look at these colors, right? You know, so the red is because like it's not yet complete, right? And then it's showing you what's available. Uh, so I don't know what is list. I never even did that. Oh, I guess there's yeah, a custom initializer location. But we'll do new, right? So you can do like dash dash, artifact ID, blah blah blah, right? All those things that are the menu items, in not the menu items, but text box and combo boxes on the website. But what's really cool is he's made sort of a very cool. I don't know why my computer's so slow. So it's asking you a question: where would you like your new app to be? So the new app. He's like, yep, it's okay. There's no directory called new app there, so you're good. And then you see you can use the arrows, right? So and you can filter. So like if you only wanted Maven, you type M and you only get M. So you see it says filtering on M, right?
Yeah.
So we go Maven. I go Java. So you get the idea, right? The menu
Hmm.
system, and you can just kind of click your way to happiness. Package name, and this is nice, right? Because you get all of these things, and then you can say, I don't know, cloud stream. You get a little X. So I don't know, a lot of nice stuff. So if you go to new app, uh, sorry. So this dot thing is like a escape to the shell, and then you could type things if you're in the interactive mode, which I'll just
Very
stay here
nice.
because I didn't set up the batch completion, which was a mistake. I don't want to waste people's time. Um, yeah, so you have that. So you can do boot new, right? And uh, I'll give it, let's say, a name, right? My app, and then package name. I always do convent x kcd dot, I don't know, demo. So what it's doing now is because we didn't give any information about the type of app we want, by default you get a REST service, which is like the variation on what's there in the getting started guide for creating a REST service. So I'll maybe open up a window. Let's see where we are. I mean, I'll open up the IDE. Oops, typo. Did I make a mistake?
I don't remember what the path was.
September 12th. Yeah. I don't know why it's not happy. Mark. Yeah. I don't know. There
All
it
right.
is. So I called it my app. Oh yes, let's trust everything.
So for those that are listening, we're just opening the application in our favorite IDE. Super
Mm-hmm.
easy.
Oh, where did it go? Some other window. Yep. So you see, this is the app, the application, and
And this looks familiar.
yep, you get the greeting controller,
Yeah.
and you get the greeting test.
So this,
and a little README that isn't much, but shows you what's going on.
yeah,
So if we run this, see, run application. So I assume it's running here. No, not yet. It's thinking. I feel like there's something in the background on my computer. Oh, maybe it's the sharing of the screen. It's going.
yeah,
I'm not
maybe.
very happy about that because this is way slow. Let's see if I can take a look at what's sucking up my bandwidth.
Yeah, we get it. Things get slow sometimes.
I
It
know
might be that we're
Brave is going crazy. My browser.
Brave. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, Brave browser for the
Oh, Brave.
paranoid.
Yes.
Now, let's just go back to here. Man, it can't possibly be taking this long to
Yeah, I
synchronize
see
output
it's trying
directory.
to do all the indexing and stuff. And that's one of the
All
new
right.
things that I've gotten used to as I try to explore all the like milestone releases and I'm using snapshots more and more lately, uh, just to try out the new stuff. I get it.
Yeah. So there it is. So we can do Spring. So it compiled, right?
Yeah. But the difference here is you've given kind of not just the dependencies, you've given some working code.
That's right. So I'll make a new window that's run in the other window just because, oops. Correct. So you got the hello world.
Fantastic.
So let's see.
So,
Oh,
but both of those are included. So, that the
I'm gonna
typical
go to this.
start of a project for me is start.spring.io. I grab my dependencies, but you're doing basically the same thing with the initializer
Right. Let's just
function.
see if it.
So, stay in the
Except
CLI.
it's getting code, right? That's a big
Yep.
difference, right?
So the
So
initializer one gives me basically the same thing I got out of the start.spring.io.
right.
Now
So
the boot
suppose you
new.
want the web app, right?
Uh-huh.
So this is where there's the idea of a project catalog. So if I do Spring project list, bigger, and I'll go up one the directory, Spring project list.
Thomas has a question. He
Okay.
says, could you include a Spring CLI inside a dependency to create a source code generator, for example? Would you
Uh,
include?
yeah, so you can extend, I'll show later how you can use Spring CLI to generate source code exactly. Uh, but it is like any other Spring project. I guess you can extend it. Right now, it's only one package, so I haven't separated, things to be sort of in a library format. But let's get to, probably the gist of your question is like, can I use it to create code from templates? And so, yeah, the long story short is there are three ways you can create code, right? Basically, getting it from GitHub repos, like we just did now, doing a clone, adding it from existing GitHub repos, or the super fancy way is asking AI to generate the code for you.
Oh
And
boy.
other way, sorry, is templating. So I guess those are like the three buckets. So you see here, Spring Project list. So web is the default right here. That's the URL. So this is kind of just a very simple mapping of projects, with a simple name to a URL. So suppose we wanted to get Spring Data JPA project
Mhm.
going, right? So the way we could do that. Oops.
Going back into the CLI.
Yeah. Boy, I really wish I set the bash completion up because I have 95% of all my CPUs being used with this streaming.
Oh,
It's pretty impressive. This is a sad chart here.
we're doing it in high def. We're
Look
doing
at
all of
that.
this. Oh yes.
That's not good. Shouldn't be freaking out like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's do the boot new, right? But this time, we'll say from, and we can say JPA, and I don't know, name my JPA. I'm not gonna. So getting that right, and so if I cd to my JPA right now and do a tree, see I get a customer repository and so on. But if I go back now to my app, let me just do Maven clean. See, this is the original one, so I can do Spring Boot new, Spring Boot add JPA, right? So this is the smart merging that's going on.
Very cool. Thomas had added. He says currently he's doing things with IntelliJ templates, but you can't easily share those.
Yep.
So one of the things I noticed on the screen is you had different catalogs of projects. Is this maybe where Thomas could fill in? Like if he's got a project.
Yeah.
If he's got a project.
So the catalog, yeah. So there's two types of catalogs. So what we'll get to, I think, what he wants, because he's talking about templates, is there's a project catalog, and then there isn't right now, but there needs to be a user-defined command catalog. And these user-defined commands are what give you the ability to generate code, and we'll get to that, I promise. So now, if you do tree, you see I have the customer and the customer repository. Let's see if this is acting any better. I noticed that IntelliJ is really bad with syncing directories. Why is this? This happened to me recently too. I need a refresh. My God. You gotta be kidding me. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it's just not showing up.
What's the magic command to refresh?
I don't know it off the top of my head. Does anybody? I'll bet you Jitter Ted knows. How do I refresh my directory? What's that? I don't know it off the top of my head.
Disk. There it is.
There we go.
I've reloaded. No,
it's still not there.
Why is my IntelliJ all screwed up?
Well, I see what's happening. So what I can see is in your project, now you've got...
Let me just, I'm sure IntelliJ fans are screaming at me.
That's, I can hear the IntelliJ fans in the background. The sirens.
Yeah. Oh, what did I do? Did I do comma? Don't save. I just wanted to browse it, that's all.
There you go.
I know that my computer is 100% now.
Yeah. Problem with doing the streaming and all that kind of stuff.
Streaming is not working out well.
We'll have to see if we can get another option here.
No, I guess we'll just have to try and go with it.
So Jitter Ted says, shouldn't need to manually refresh as long as the focus moves to the project window, and could be whatever slowing your machine down is affecting the refresh of the file system. So yeah, we get it. We get it. We'll figure it out. Probably 5 seconds after we leave the stream.
I don't know. I can't even use disappointing.
That's okay. We can stay in the terminal. So in the terminal, we can see what we have here.
Yeah, I'd like to browse a file tree.
I get it. I get it. So yeah, what you did was you added the JPA to an existing project. Just that alone is kind of an exciting piece, especially for those of us that are comfortable going in, and I'm looking at those guides, and I want to bring that level in. So that is definitely a time saver. What does that look like going forward?
What does what look like?
That idea where I can,
Yeah, so I can't believe I cannot bring up. I mean, how can I do anything at this point? I maybe need to reboot and come back, and because I mean, this is not.
if you want to try that, we can do that. We're
All right,
here. We want to hear about all the cool things. So whatever you think's best.
all right, now it's working, is it? Yeah,
There we go. Now we can see what we got.
yeah. So you got a custom repository. You know, I didn't normally when I do these demos, I show oh, annoying like Nagware. Um, Normally when I show these demos, I like add it to Git and then show you it added
Yeah.
data JPA. So and what's important is you can get a test, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So and if you notice, there's a README here. Probably should start with that, right? So the README in the original repo where this came from gets renamed to README-JPA, the name of what you typed.
Uh-huh.
So anytime you need to, kind of know what it is you added, the README should, take you to where you need to go. And so the catalog idea, uh, Spring project catalog list available. I think when the fan goes on, we'll really have to reboot. So there's two catalogs available, right? And so the default catalog is like what I kind of showing some of these JPA and I've already added to it this AI Azure because I made a catalog for that. But the idea here is that you can add a catalog, to this list, and what does this look like, right? Like, let's open this link. So this is just publicly hosted somewhere, right? And this is the list of repositories where the apps are, right? So this is some collaborator who's working with Cora on Dapper with test containers and Spring. And so it's in this repo under the read app subfolder. It's in this repo here under the subscriber app folder. So, if I do, and like these names are, you see a read app, Dapper app for reading from a state store. Like, I don't even know what it is completely. But if I add the catalog, project, well, first I'll do a list to show you that it's not there. Normally this is like, even though it's loading a JVM, it's super snappy, but because
Hmm.
I have 92% of 12 CPUs
That's
streaming.
interesting. That's unfortunate for us, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Sorry, I'm going to complain the whole way. I got to stop. um, yeah, so you see there's AI to this source. There's modular stuff from Oliver. He contributed that. But now I'll do, so if you do Spring project catalog list, so it's going out to these two catalogs and basically showing you in the table format what I just showed you in the rung. So now we do Spring project catalog add. What was it called? Dapper, something like that.
Yep.
Dapper.
So you're adding the Dapper catalog, and then that's going to show up in your
Right.
product
So this is a
list.
way that you could use it in house, in your own. So you see now we have a read, subscribe, and write. So
Hmm.
if I do Spring boot new, uh, let's say my dapper read.
Very cool. We have a question
Mm-hmm.
that says, "Hey, I assume these catalog repos would need to be publicly available for the CLI to access it. Is is there anything I understand this part. Like, hey, if I'm doing something internally, do I need to make those repos public, or how would I authenticate against those?
So we
That's a good
support right
question.
now GitLab and GitHub, and I think if you're using like GitLab, internally, then you're probably already authenticated. Uh, but we do provide auth, so you can authorize the Spring app to read. You authorize with GitHub, which actually sometimes is necessary because GitHub provides a limit on how many times you can pull for free without being authenticated.
Got it.
So I think once you log in, then you'd be able to access everything that you as a user would, including your private repos. Not sure how it works with GitLab, um, but yeah, something to look into, I
Yeah.
suppose. So try it out, and if there are issues, let me know. But yeah, we've had frequent requests for you name it, every type of version control system that is out there, and so yeah, we'd love to support that, but we'd also love to get PRs for that support, right?
Yep.
Because we don't have every version control
PRs are welcome.
system
Yep.
uh,
Friendly
available,
reminder that PRs are always welcome.
right? So we saw that
Not
in
always
Spring Boot,
approved.
Spring Bad, well, more times than not. I'm a nice
Yeah.
guy. So uh, so here I'll show you some of the templating, and we'll start real small um, with that. So I'm going to create a new user defined command. So if I do command new, this is how you can extend the CLI. And this is going to get into showing how you can use templating to help with your code. So what's important here, I didn't really want to do it here, but it doesn't matter. You see there's a folder .spring commands. So we need a command now called hello and new. And typically it's kind of like noun and verb. So just because I think I have the IDE opened with my app, is that right? Yeah, let me go do it over there again. So I'll just do command new so we can look at it in the IDE a little bit. So hooray, .spring
Yay.
hello new, right? So what's here, these things, I don't really want everything split screen. This is describing the command. So we have one option called greeting, this data type, and so on. And here's what actually happens. So kind of trying to go slowly is evolving slowly into sort of a GitHub action style syntax. So what we'd like to do is generate the file. So that's the action. We like to create hello.txt. And here's where we start getting into the templating. And this is the hello world version, right? The more sophisticated things we'll get into in a moment. So here we have greeting. So if you remember, greeting is the name of the option we'll pass in. So -- greeting.
Okay.
And then we have a whole bunch of variables that come from system properties, or they come from the Maven POM itself, like the artifact ID and all the things you can imagine that you get from your Maven POM. So what's
Okay.
cool is that now if I go back to here, I do Spring help. See, I have a user-defined command called hello new, right?
another good question. Can you
Hmm.
ship the Spring CLI binary with a pre-configured command from a dependency?
Pre-configured command. So I did put some environment, some Spring properties that you can set, which will essentially load up what is your default catalog. Um, in terms of the command, suppose you mean from from here, right?
Yeah,
So the binary itself can refer to the as of yet created user-defined command catalog. So I'll show that in a minute. Not the command catalog, but you'll have to imagine in your head the same experience. So basically, I get where you're coming from. It's like you'd like someone to install this, right, and then have your stuff ready to go out of the box.
yep,
And the idea or the way I was thinking to approach this was, yes, we definitely want to support that use case. Um, and the way I thought to go about doing it, which is certainly open for feedback, is to be able to define, Spring Boot, configuration properties, right? So uh, you can specify the locations of your catalogs and the locations of your command catalogs, but I haven't implemented the command catalog. So that's the idea where we're going uh, to support
yeah.
that type of thing.
Thomas,
Uh,
for you, I think I kind of feel where you're going. Hey, I've got a ecosystem project, and I want to have this CLI that supports it. So, Mark, you've built kind of a base here, and just like Thomas, I think
mhm.
my head's moving where he's like, "Hey, wouldn't it be neat if this Spring related project that I know that he's working on, wouldn't it be neat if I had a CLI that could do some code
Right.
generation that could help people
Yep.
go along?"
Yeah, I
And
mean,
now
I think
we've seen
worst
two
case,
options.
what you're talking about is like I showed before, the list of available catalogs. I think
Yeah.
one complaint that we've had around Spring Initializer with the community is like, I'd like a checkbox for my project, right?
Yep.
And the idea was, well, we can't give checkboxes for everything. I don't know
Yeah.
why we can't, but I understand there's a lot of weird
Yeah.
dependencies going on. And the goal here
Huh.
isn't to make sure that every checkbox is mutually compatible, right?
Right.
So the list of available catalogs is just a file somewhere that I maintain. I'm happy to put people's stuff, right, if it's a public open source project. But if it's more internal,
Mhm.
then you have to either add it manually or set an environment variable. So you're talking like 1 or 2 steps. I don't think it's too bad to do that. So there it is. It created that file. So if you do hello, you see it created hello Mondo on Linux, right?
Yes.
But you know what you really want to do is generate some code potentially with templating. And so
Yeah.
um, I would highly encourage you to see if what you can do can be
Mhm.
done without templating. It's kind of interesting to see what are the use cases uh, where templating is appropriate. I think adding like huge swaths of functionality, um, it's maybe not the best use case
Mhm.
because when you have it in a working project, you can have that project have a CI system and it's working and it's less brittle than templating. But sometimes like you're creating components over and over and over again, right? And this is same thing in JavaScript. The package is there, right? You can add a component to Angular, right? And what does that mean? It adds like 3 files and a test.
Yep.
So I think there's some line there that people have to find because it definitely is a little more squirrely using templating for code generation. So here's an example which will show you around code generation of just like a Spring controller. But you can imagine a few other files in there creating like a service and a repository layer and whatnot. So what this has done is it's created a command called controller new.
Oh, okay.
And so you get to decide the name of the feature, right? So in a way, this is like a feature new command,
Yeah.
even though it's just generating the controller. That's where I was going with it. So here's the action file. And so you see, I'd like to create this file where, and now this is where these special variables come into play. The
Yeah.
root package directory. This is the location of where you have the at Spring Boot application class. So you need to follow the best practice of putting this in sort of the root directory of where your things are. And another best practice, I think, which is often not done in kind of very quick tutorials, is you should not have any bean definitions inside here. That's great for like, learning, right?
Yep.
But it's not great for production.
Okay.
So those are some of the, so that you get that root package. Feature is the command line option, right? Features there. That's the name of this, right? And now you can start to see, we're like, well, what's the feature, right? Well, let's call it like order or something. I don't know, right? But you don't want to have lowercase order controller. So you use the helper functions here. I'm using handlebars to capitalize the first letter of the feature name. So if we create a new feature called order, it'll be order controller. And now instead of it being inline like before, we had hello here, right? It was hello,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. Now, it's getting a little bit, sophisticated. You can't really want to put multiple lines inside YAML, and probably
Hmm.
can do it, but it starts to get a
Yep.
little squirrely. So it's like it's coming from this location, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of what you deal with when you're dealing with templating, for better or not. It's not real Java code. It's Java code with curly braces, right?
Yep.
And so again, you can make use of the root package feature, and again, capitalize the first letter, and then you put this in here, right? So if we go back to this, you can say Spring controller, new feature order. Yeah, I see. So I kind of want to replicate the Angular CLI generate component. That's exactly what I was aiming to do.
So I know that you've looked at a lot of the different CLIs out there,
Mm-hmm,
and you've kind of like pulled some of the things you like. But then
mm-hmm.
to Thomas and everybody in the community, this is still experimental right now. Like now's the time to take it for a spin, and think
Yeah.
about what this could do for your use cases. One of the things that you touched on, Mark, was the best practices, and I actually had that question earlier today from
Mm-hmm.
another org where hey, they're moving forward. They're going to touch a bunch of these applications as they're migrating to Spring Boot 3.1.3 and Java 17 and next week Java 21. And what they were asking about, because we're getting so much value from Spring CLI, Spring Boot Migrator, and others, is there something that we could do that would maybe like identify, hey, you've got beans in your main class, and this is not a best practice for reasons. Is there something that we could do? You know what? Maybe
Well,
that leads us into the
that would, the way that could be implemented, but is using Open Rewrite. A lot of what I'm showing here is using Open Rewrite under the covers to
Mhm.
manipulate code. But there's nothing, that's the framework by which you would use to implement some sort of recipe, right? So, there's a Open Rewrite is a open source project. You can, maybe I just bring it up here real briefly. It's worth highlighting, at least to answer your question. Um, let me, so here. So there actually will be so we spoke about Spring Boot new, Spring Boot add. There will be a Spring Boot upgrade command. So I'm working with Fabian, who is the lead of the Spring Boot Migrator project. So we're bringing over, this upgrade recipe, right? And the recipe is in the form of an open rewrite recipe. So this project here, uh, you know, lets you upgrade your apps, right? But really, the use case you described um, applies. So there's a recipe, for example, upgrading, JUnit 4 to JUnit 5.
Mhm.
And in the context of what you were saying, uh, you could say that JUnit 4 is a bad practice. I'd like to
Yep.
upgrade my bad practice.
Mhm.
So you would write a recipe that looks, oh, where are all the places that have this import statement? All right, you got to remove that and add the right one. And depending on the level of what it is you want to upgrade, it can be, like upgrading Jakarta namespace. Okay, that's
Yep.
trivial, right? Like just
Yeah.
changing imports. But if you're like, getting into like a complex builder API that changed, then you're really starting to manipulate this AST, right, abstract syntax tree of the Java code in a much lower level. And Open Rewrite makes that easy, I guess you'd say, but it's
Hmm.
still like a parsing task, right?
Yep.
So there is kind of a little bit of a high bar, I'd say, to start writing your own, but it's doable. So if you think it's very valuable for your company because maybe you have 100 apps that are following this old best practice and you want to
Hmm.
upgrade to the new best practice, then it's worth to take the time, to invest in making those recipes so you can upgrade. And so I would suggest, yeah, that type of use case, you start to look real heavily into Open Rewrite itself.
Yeah, you and I both have like habits, things that are conventions. And I think the more I hear about this and more I think about it, I think maybe what that customer was asking earlier today was, could I codify? And I think we could. I think we could here kind of codify some of those best practices. Like, hey, here's how our org likes to organize our controllers,
Yes.
our REST services.
So correct. Yes. So what I just showed you, like this is doing that, right? This is
Yep.
the best practice, and that's different than the question of upgrading your best practice, right?
Yeah.
So here we're
Yes.
making, what is it like? Every line of code you write is some maintenance, right? I know
Yes. Yep.
it's instant technical debt, despite the fact you think it's the greatest new thing on the planet, but it's tech debt at some point.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, you could totally do that. And right here, there was a project that I was greatly inspired by from the Java script community um, called HiGen. I'll just bring it up. Not why I wanted it just popped into my head. Yeah, the simple, fast, scalable code generator. So props to this project. Um, you know, uh, it has a lot of the features here. It's not one to one, and of course their scripting language is different. Yeah, I forgot what they're using, but I think they're just using JavaScript itself, right? But I brought that up for a reason. I can't remember. Getting a little tired late in the day. Oh yeah, because one thing that was clever from that project was that best practices for your project change over time, right? So suppose you're in your team and this isn't controller new, it's like new feature, right? It's like
Mhm.
your class that is feature by package, right? And feature by package has a controller, a service layer, a repository, and so on. Maybe your repository and you like to use Lombok, and maybe you have your favorite DTO library, right? All that stuff.
Yep.
That's your baby. Now, someone on the team says, I want to tweak that. So like going forward, I really want to, have this modification to what we do. Uh, these are all local, right? In the
Hmm.
repository, and there's an option to install it under your root directory tilde, right? So it kind of can look in both places. And that's a chance for the team to evolve, what they consider to be their best practice over time. Doesn't address changing the previous stuff you created, right?
Right.
That kind of welcome to instantaneous technical debt comment. But it means going forward, it's not like, again, this is like an example of JHipster. If I want to modify the JHipster stuff, it's like I have to go figure out how to do that and then publish the artifact and then reconsume the artifact. That's a lot different than going here and just saying, I'm going to add another mapping,
Yep.
right? And I'm going to, greeting two, right? And this is, feature two. And now I will delete the order controller just because, and then I'll go back here and, oops, where was that directory? Sorry, I'm getting lost with my windows. So maybe this was it? No? Oh, maybe this was it, yeah. Yeah, so this feature, this idea, right, that you have a directory structure, it's very simple, command, subcommand, and that it's accessible for your entire team to simply modify easily. So let's go to order controller, right? Now I got order two, greeting two, right?
Very nice. Yep.
So that's like a super quick cycle, right? So the idea is like to remove this barrier, right, for people to update what the commands are, right? That add a module, right? I mean, essentially these are Spring modules in some level, right? The
Yeah.
components, maybe is the better word, not module. Sorry. There is a component model in Spring, and this is. So I
Yeah.
didn't include a test. It should include a test, but you get the idea.
So
So I can show one or two more things, I
I
guess.
want to see, we put on the title Spring CLI and Spring AI. AI is kind of a hot topic these days. How do you
It
feel
is.
about
Yeah.
jumping over to Spring AI?
I'll just do one more thing, and
Okay.
then we'll jump there.
I
Yeah.
mean, you're the man.
Yeah.
I'm,
No, I want to get there, and we
yeah.
will.
And
So.
here's the thing. We can
Mhm.
go over a little bit. We're not bound for time. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have like 5 minutes, so
yeah,
we'll get to the two things hopefully in 10 minutes. This will be real quick. Let me just
I'm
copy
excited.
this. So we always had this CF push mantra, I guess you might say, and everyone likes the idea of just a simple command to deploy their apps. And so one reason that the Spring CLI project got a little bit of new life breathed into it was interest from Microsoft and the relationship with deploying apps on the
Oh,
Azure Spring
yes.
Apps platform.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like the getting started experience with Azure Spring Apps could be better, frankly, um, to deploy an app. And this is not unique to Azure Spring Apps. I remember the same thing even with Kubernetes, and I know TAP is trying to simplify that, and it does
Yeah.
a good job. But um, a lot of times you just kind of want to script together someone else's CLI, basically, to take care of redundancy or to ask you to choose different options as you're deploying. So what
Yeah.
I did now is I installed, let me go over here, command called ASA, which stands for Azure Spring Apps, deploy, right? So basically we're gonna have a command, Spring ASA deploy. That's the equivalent of um, CF push, right? So one
Okay.
liner, it'll get your app deployed to Azure Spring Apps. And so here's where it starts to get, much more akin to GitHub Actions, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things you need in the ecosystem, that they have in Azure Spring Apps is a concept called a resource group. So usually these are provisioned ahead of time for you, and this is kind of like spaces in Cloud Foundry, right, or namespaces in
Hmm.
Kubernetes or clusters, right? It's kind of your segmentation, your highest levels of segmentation. And you can get the list of those, right, from using the command az group, right?
Okay.
So if I just go somewhere and type az group list, we get a bunch of JSON. The only thing that's really significant is the name, right? So I've been
Okay.
using it for data flow, and this is like just to have two.
Hmm.
So what we're doing here is we're saying, if you don't have a variable called resource group, because we're going to have to pass resource group over and over and over again to many
Okay.
commands, we're going to say, let's ask a question of the user. We're going to define a variable called resource group. We're going to present it in a dropdown, and the results are out of that JSON, the names. And then there's a similar thing for service instance. Again, I wish it wasn't so complicated, but it
Uh-huh.
is. And here, this could be more unique. And one of the um, issues, I suppose, is that this has to be globally unique, right? So
Hmm.
it's, I don't know about the whole world, but pretty wide. So in
Yeah.
getting started guides, if you just type hello or my service instance, someone's taken that already, right? And then you get an
Yep.
error message. You're like, what am I doing wrong? So I don't know. Here, username seems to work for me.
Okay.
So I'm defining the second variable, right? And then you have to basically run two commands. So I'm going to change exec to run, but it's like GitHub Actions run. I'm
Okay.
saying, if you don't have the service instance, let's create it, right? And this one kind of you can create over and over, it doesn't really matter. But you get the idea that I'm using the underlying commands, right,
Uh-huh.
to sort of just do lightweight scripting. It's exactly like GitHub Actions, right?
Yeah.
And there are a million more options here, dash, dash, you name it, but I picked the minimal ones. If you want to customize this, you're
Yeah.
free to go ahead. So that's the provision part, right? And then finally, you deploy your app, right? And then you say it's available at this place. So let's try it. I haven't deployed an app in a long time to.
So kind of just reset. If I didn't have anything set up inside of Azure Cloud, what this is doing, I want this simple, like, hey, deploy it in the cloud. And what you're doing here is you're asking me the questions that I need to answer in order to provision stuff if it's not there. And if there is
Yes.
something there, I get to choose.
Right. So here there's two. So we're going to pick demo. And that was really the only thing that was a question. I guess you could have the service instance as a question too. This
Yep.
all kind of needs to get reviewed with Microsoft. This is the first attempt at doing it. So yeah,
Yeah, let me ask
let's
this
let that
question.
go, and in the meantime, we can talk
Yeah.
about something else.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
So one of the commands, I don't know what the best way to do this is also going to take time.
All right,
Let
Thomas.
me go to
Yes.
the well. Let's see. Might as well. I can always. So this one. Spring CLI Table that. All right. So AI add. So you can start to give it a description, of what it is you want, right?
Okay.
I'll cut and paste something here. And basically, when you ask, in this case, OpenAI is what's behind it, and there's a sophisticated prompt, but trying to help generate the right stuff. So this is like a minimal thing, right? So you're saying I want JPA functionality with integration test, all in the same package. So here's an example. The first time I did this, it didn't use object mapper to serialize a Java object. It used some other, I don't know, some other library. I don't even remember what it was. I was like, I don't want that, right?
I'm going to read this for the people that are listening on the podcast. Your command here is AI add dash dash description JPA functionality with an integration test. Include all Java code in the same package. Use object mapper to serialize a Java object to a JSON string in integration tests.
Right.
Fantastic.
So this is going to cook, and depending, maybe by this time, all right, this is slowly cooking.
All right. So in the one example there, we're building infrastructure inside of Azure, and on this one, now you've asked some AI, some backing AI to say, hey, do this thing, build this project, add this thing that I just asked you, and it's running.
Yeah.
And look at this.
Yeah. So here's another good example. So you see this runtime version Java 17 at the bottom here.
Uh-huh.
We broke the Azure Spring App sample app when we upgraded it to Java 17 and didn't tell them, and the default is Java 8, right? And so in this string here, if I go to the command, I know it's finished, which is great. Deploy, right? I think it's deploy. You see, Java version is a variable name, right? So if the POM changed, then you're all cool, right? You don't have to think of adding that, right? So it's like
Got it.
all these little hiccups along the way
Yeah.
that were preventing people. So there it is. Let's see if it actually worked.
So we're looking at the ASA demo where we just said Spring ASA deploy. And it went
Yeah.
out and
So
it built this ASA app. So ASA, for those of us that don't know, ASA is
yes,
it's Kubernetes, right?
yeah, underneath, yeah, but they hide all that. So there it is. We're on Azure Microservices.io greeting, and that
And it
was the
worked.
endpoint. Yeah, we could go to other endpoints, but
So is this going to ASA or ASAE? Because I know there's two flavors.
yeah, there's two flavors. For this simple demo, it's just ASA,
Okay.
but it's it works with both. All right.
Wonderful. Very
Let's
cool.
go back here. Okay, so it finished, right?
So now we're looking at the AI example, and
yeah,
I'm giddy to see what it did.
yeah. Let me just delete this order for a second. Okay, so I don't want to screw something up. But so here it is. So what this has done, this was kind of a happy accident in developing this, is so now we have this README, right? So this
Okay.
code, yeah, might not be suitable for production use, right? So it's
Did
generated
you put that
today.
in or did the AI put that in?
I did, right? Because I
Okay.
knew someone would say, yell at me or something for saying this was perfect. It's not. So
Okay.
here's what it was generated, right? And what you get
Uh-huh.
is like a custom README that describes the steps, right?
Got it.
So it knows that our package name is com.xkcd.demo. So the under the covers, I'm passing in additional information to what you typed, right?
Oh, okay.
To help it along, right?
Yeah.
So it's saying here you have to add Spring Boot Star JPA, start a test, and the Jackson stuff. So if you didn't specify a domain, I said use person with name and phone number as a default domain. So that's what we got. You get the person repository, the person service, you get the controller, and you get an integration test
Very cool.
of the controller. And then the prompt that was underneath said, based on, the content you've generated, give me 5 links to tutorials that are out there, right?
Wow.
So hopefully those are useful. It's kind of like the Google search results for
Yeah.
tutorials on Spring Data JPA. So, you go through and you iterate, and also there's a option.
So all of that doesn't exist anywhere. That's not in a catalog somewhere.
No,
That
it's
was
literally just in
generated
the
by the
README.
AI.
Yeah, and it's sitting in a README because it takes time. You will be iterating. Like it never gets it quite right out of the box. This
Uh-huh.
whole term called prompt engineering,
Yep.
um, telling it what you want is an art and a science. You can kind of get the hang of it after a while. Um, but yeah, expect the first one to be missing something, right?
Okay.
So you're like, okay, I don't want to add this to my code base just yet. I want to iterate getting this README file. See, it says AI
Okay.
JPA, getting it to where I like it, and then saying, oh, this looks good now, right?
Okay.
And so now, oh, by the way, there was a command here called a rewrite, which will rewrite what you wrote to be better, right? Because no one writes great instructions, right? We wrote like,
Okay.
if our English teachers could see us now, they'd fail half the class.
LOL, right?
Yeah. Uh, so now what you can do is you can say guide apply, right? So
Ah, very nice.
I guess here, actually, I don't know why it's not completing. Spring guide apply readme dash AI.
So here's
So
the,
this is, yeah, this hopefully will work, right?
as someone who doesn't know anything about Spring AI, did this get generated locally or does it happen on a remote server? So,
So it gets generated by asking a remote server. Well, right now it's talking to OpenAI, right? But part of the Spring AI project is to provide an abstraction to whatever AI model that you're talking to, right? So it could be hosted remotely, it could be hosted locally. So just recently, last week, and today on this, I don't know if it's public, these Tanzu Live things. Are those available? Is that internal,
um,
DaShaun?
the Tanzu Live, I believe, is public.
Yeah. Okay, good. So the point is that Taz, aka Cloud Foundry, now has an AI service, right? And so just like you have a database tile, let's call this the AI tile, and it's using Meta's Llama model, which is so it's running locally on Cloud Foundry. So it means it's running locally in your data center if you choose to deploy
Hmm.
Cloud Foundry Taz in your data center. So it's definitely reaching out, through an API to the model. But that model could be running locally or it could be hosted.
Very nice.
Right.
So
So
one of
it
the
applied
things,
this now, right?
yeah,
So let's go back to this. So
and there we
now
go.
close this. So let's see what we got. So under AI, right, you see,
Yeah.
well, that's the test, person integration test, right? And then we got the other person here. So it's looking like it's not completely happy for some reason, but let's see.
But this is still pretty amazing.
Let's see if it compiles. Hopefully it does. That'd be a nice way to end the day.
I mean, if it compiles, it works.
Yeah, I might not have. So it's not happy with customer. What is that?
Some
Just,
customer repository
because I
test.
deleted. Sorry, I thought I might have had overlap. Let me just delete this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
independently test. Yeah,
So
understood.
there are things that aren't completely working out. Like if you have two that's why I was deleting stuff. I was like, oh, I don't remember if I used customer already, and
Uh-huh.
you don't want to have conflicts. But I think that was probably unnecessary. I probably screwed myself more than should just let it go. So there it is. Yeah, it ran right, and it's running
Yeah.
that entire integration test that that OpenAI wrote. Yep, there it is.
But the thing is, like, so like,
Oh, didn't
come
finish
and
my note.
reset. What we did with the Spring CLI and its AI feature, you can initialize a project. You can today you can add some example code from some of the
I was never
from the
used.
catalog that's there. We can
Mhm.
add stuff. Then you asked the AI part. You said, "Hey, here's what I'd like." You had it generate some code, and the way that it works today is it generates that README, so I can refactor and I can change until I get a README guide that looks like it's
Mhm.
going to work, and then you apply that guide.
Mhm. Yes.
So all of that is available today,
Yeah.
and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. You have to bring your own key to use it, right? So we're not
Okay.
hosting OpenAI for free for everyone. Although I'd love to and actually see how cheap or expensive it is. But yeah, we'll get there slowly. So there are little rough edges. Like in terms of rough edges, like where we have to go. I've experimented, creating Spring Batch applications. So
Yeah.
I say like, I have somewhere a folder here of like successful prompts. Uh, but OpenAI training data. So we're lucky in the sense that Spring is such a popular Java framework that the
Yeah.
training data of OpenAI itself knows about Spring, right? So you can't say that about every
Yeah.
framework. It's like your own custom in-house framework. So one way this manifests itself is like one thing I had to do uh, behind the scenes, in multiple steps was it doesn't know about this namespace change. So actually, what comes out of it was not using the Jakarta namespace, right?
Got it.
So I made those code changes as like a post-processing step.
Yeah.
But similarly, like I asked it to create a Spring Batch application that reads from a file and then filters out something and then writes to a database. So like an item reader, item processor,
Yeah.
item writer. And in the latest versions of Spring Batch, the signature for those have changed, right? And that's post September 2021. So it kind of
Okay.
generates the wrong code, right?
Yeah.
And so there are nuances to this, right? That we'll figure out over time, how to get around that, because you
Mhm.
can train the models or fine tune the models
Yeah.
to act more correct. But it's pretty compelling, kind of what you can get out. At least it's a fun toy for now, right? And
Yeah.
you can experiment, with it and see how far you get and give feedback. But I hope you can tell, like from this, you can get some stuff that actually works, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, and get it added to your project quickly. And the other thing is that you know, sort of
Look at this.
this sort of unexpected feature, I guess, which is you can there's probably a little more work to make this happen because I passed in the package name up front, but you could handcraft like um, it's definitely feasible to handcraft a README file, right? So never was created completely by hand, right?
Oh
This README
yeah. Yeah.
file
Yeah.
was not generated by AI. It was
Yeah.
generated by a human being, right? And
Yeah.
probably it has a generic package name in there. But then this guy, this command Spring guide apply, right?
Hmm.
works just the same because it's parsing the README file, saying, oh, I see this is a Java section. I see this is, the section with the XML for the Maven POM. So I'm going to
Yeah.
merge in these dependencies. So it's reusing the same feature set under the covers as Spring Boot add, right? Where you're merging two projects, right? Your current one
Yeah.
here, and then the one that lives out there. So it's kind of parsing this README, saying, oh, this is XML for Maven. Aha, I know what to do with that. I'm going to merge it, right? And then it says, oh, I see this is Java code. I know what to do with that. I'm going to put it in the package, right? And this one didn't have. Sometimes I'm surprised it didn't have some application property settings, right? So
Uh,
those get merged into. So there is this kind of intelligence of parsing this README file and applying it to the code base.
yeah.
Doesn't require it to come from AI. You can just write it flat out. I mean,
Very
you can
cool.
see it's just a README file, right? There's no
We have a question,
smoke and
Daniel,
mirrors.
in the audience. Daniel has been taking this for a spin, and he ran into an issue. He says, any idea why the Spring Boot new dash dash from hangs on Windows? He just installed it using the
Yeah.
MSI installer. Daniel, since we're running out of time, I'm going to ask you, open up an issue. Say, hey,
Yes.
here's what I expected, and here's what I got. If you could share
The
a
reason
screen
is
grab,
because we barely tested on Windows despite having this relationship with Microsoft.
that would be wonderful. Daniel, thank you so much for not just like following along and joining us today, but then also
Yeah.
taking it for a spin as we're going. This is the type of interaction and feedback that we need. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. Let's open up an issue. I've got a
Mhm.
Windows machine. I'm going to take it for a spin. I'm going to try to replicate it. So as
Yeah,
you
so
jump
what I
on,
would say, I'm sorry your experience with the installer is bad. So download the jar, right? And then do java-jar on that as an alias. Um,
there
but
you go.
yeah, I have a Mac around here too I need to test on. But everyone on Mac wants to use brew. So you
Yep,
need to make a brew thing.
I get it.
So yeah, but
Daniel says
for sure
thanks.
the easiest way is to just get the Uber jar.
Mark,
So yeah, that's the tour.
this
Thanks
has been
for
wonderful.
hang in there. I hope people try it out and give feedback. It's
This is
certainly
exciting
appreciated
stuff.
the feedback.
It's definitely an exciting time to be a Spring developer, and I love all of the work that you're doing. So keep it up.
Yeah, you
And
too.
yeah, like
I'm
I,
just here for the moment, right? You're here always.
yeah, it's great presentation. Good job. Hey, and Jitter says we will be checking it out, and we got some thanks. Like this is great
Oh,
and a
good
good
night
night
from
from
Athens.
Athens.
Oh, indeed, staying up
Yeah,
late. Wow.
yeah, we're really lucky here that we get the audience and the great
Yeah,
support that we do.
and
And
buonanotte to the Italians.
hello, yes indeed. Yes, indeed. So thanks again, everybody. If you've got questions, yeah, get them. You can ask us on Twitter, on GitHub, or Stack Overflow. You know how to get a hold of us. But if you have questions, get them to us. This has been a great session. Thanks again. And yeah, we'll call it good. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Take care.